Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Awesome in Seattle podcast. This is your host, Christian Nossum with the Awesome Nossum Group. And I got my wonderful co-host today, Miss Shannon Nossum.
I'm here. I'm
you
excited.
are here. And we have an amazing guest, Katy Sweeden, Dimension Law Group. She is the condo master. Literally, we've used her numerous times. She is the one that fully understands how to make a DADU, a condo, so you can actually sell it off. And today, not only are we talking about that, but we are also talking about two very important bills that were recently passed in the state of Washington. They are bills HB1337 and 1110. And these are going to change the game in real estate and the state for ever moving forward. Like, it's really going to change how things are played out. So they're going to allow for a lot more density. So basically, the gist is you're going to be able to put a duplex on basically any single family lot in the entire state. And then some you're going to be able to put 4 units, and some you're going to be able to put 6 units just on a regular old house that you can't do anything other than a house right now. In about a year, you're going to be able to do a lot more. So today we're going to go way over all of that stuff so that you can be prepared ahead of time for what is to come. So let's get into it.
Katy, thank you for coming. I've been wanting to chat with you about these laws and about condos for a long time. I mean, I talked to you about my own deals. Katy does our condos. And so I'm beyond thrilled to ask you all the questions that I have had for a while.
And that everyone asks us, and we're like, we should just ask Katy.
I'm like, go ask Katy. I don't know the answer.
I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good.
Of course. Okay, so before we get too deep into the technicalities of all these things, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and kind of how you got started in it?
Yeah, of course. I practice real estate law, obviously, primarily in land use and development, and I have been for, since 2016. And I primarily did CC&Rs and easements and title review and stuff when I started out. And then when the law changed in Seattle and in the state when Wakaiwa was passed, they synced up really well because Seattle updated its building code. And then there was this new federal law called Wakaiwa that passed. And at my previous firm, my boss had said, like, we should start doing condos. And I said, we are so busy. That is a horrible idea. And he said, no, I think it's going to be a thing, and you're going to do it. Like, well, okay, thanks.
I guess I'll learn that.
I kind of begrudgingly learned condos, and that was a genius business decision because, as we all know, I mean, condos have just taken off. Mm-hmm. And so what started as kind of the small thing we thought we might do on the side grew into my primary area of practice. And I mean, at this point, I've done probably 1,000 condos.
Wow.
So
especially crazy considering there's only probably a few thousand of these type of condos in the
Katy's
state.
the master. She's doing them all.
Done probably more than half of them.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of attorneys that did it before, it was the big high-rise condos, and those are just so different. You know, I don't really do those, and so this is just a completely different thing, and you have to think of it differently. And I think my background in land use really helped because I see people do these that aren't in real estate and development. This is like a really easy way to test the waters for new investors and new developers, and they might not know to check the site for access or garbage or parking. And I have a background in that, so I can look at the site overall, and I know what questions to ask to make sure that you're not creating a unit with no access. That's a very common one that I see. So, it's turned into just a very busy part of my practice, and it's been a lot of fun.
I'm going to have you scoot forward or move this forward a little bit more, either one, or both.
Okay, so those that don't know, can you kind of explain the basics of condos and why are people creating condos when they're building a DADU, like how we build?
Yeah, that's a great question. The reason people do condos on like DADU and single family lots is because that's the only way that you can sell those separately. You can't subdivide for a couple of reasons. One, usually the zoning wouldn't allow it. There's not enough square footage. 2, even if you could, you can't actually create a separate lot for an accessory dwelling unit. It has to be on the same underlying parent parcel as the primary residence, the single family. So this is the only way currently in this state that you can sell a single family separately from the accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, and this for us, we've been following this DADU process in Seattle since the beginning. Christian, as an agent, has been watching it. Me, as a former attorney, has been watching it. And so we always knew that it would be interesting, especially when they said you can sell these off separate. Christian and I both light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of value here. There's definitely a good investment strategy around that. So we saw a huge uptick in that and people doing this kind of development. How much does it cost? This is a question that I think everybody
wants to
has.
know.
Yes.
How long does it take and how much does it cost?
Yes. So how much does it cost? I'll give you two different answers. One, if you're planning on selling one or all of the units, it doesn't matter. But if you sell at least one versus keeping them all as rentals. And the reason those are different is because if you're selling any, you need additional things beyond the condo map and the declaration. You need a public offering statement, a budget. You have to have an HOA transfer meeting so that the new owners are set up and ready to go. So if you're not selling any, I'd say between $3,000 and $4,000. $4,000 is kind of high. I would expect $3,500 for it to be around there somewhere. But keep in mind, if in 5 or 10 years or whatever point in the future you do decide to sell a unit, you still need to do all those other things you didn't do at the beginning. If you are selling the units, then I tell new condo clients to budget about $8,000. Now, it's not super likely that a repeat condo client will come in quite that high, but I've done enough of these to know that sometimes new clients just have more questions and they need a little bit more hand-holding, and that is fine by me. I want my clients to fully understand the process, but sometimes it does take quite a bit of extra time. So repeat condo clients don't typically come in that high unless, they change directions mid-project and we kind of have to redo a lot of work, of course. Some sites are just more complicated than others, but generally speaking, 6,000 to 8,000 is a pretty decent range.
Yeah. I feel like the first time we did it, even with our background, we asked you a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Because we really wanted to understand it. And I think it's smart the first time that you do it to really get that education from your attorney. Probably it's going to be Katy because she does so many of these.
And then one thing I'll add is you have more than just legal fees. You'll also need to hire a surveyor to make the condo map. Typically, that also includes them doing like a boundary topo survey that you need done for your plans. So the total cost for both the boundary survey and the condo map is typically between $6,000 to $10,000, depending on which surveyor you use. Ask me for references. You get what you pay for a lot of the time, and I can't tell you how many times clients thought they could save $800 and they ended up with 3 additional months of holding costs. I mean, they just don't compare. I can help you out. We can find a surveyor that can work with whatever your timeline is at that time. And still, that doesn't mean it's going to be $10,000 either. I know plenty of surveyors on the lower end who it depends on their workload and a lot of things at the time that you're starting the process.
I do have one follow-up question. You mentioned that if you're selling the condos, it's one price, and if you're not, it's another price. Why would someone condo it if they're not selling it? Is it for financing reasons?
Yes, typically.
Okay.
Sometimes they just want it to be done so that if they decide at some point to sell, they don't have to do all that work then. It's already finished. Originally, people were doing it because they were worried the laws were going to change and then it wouldn't be allowed and then they'd be grandfathered in. I don't really see that, obviously, especially with the new bills, I don't see that as a risk currently. But usually it's for financing. So if you buy an existing single family, a lot of people don't have the finances to also build another structure in the back. So what we do is we condo it, we create a vacant unit. You don't even have to have approved plans. And I'll talk through my client with the specifics of that site. And we consult an architect to see what we think is going to get approved, but that we can create a vacant unit and then they can switch over their financing so it's just on the unit that the single family is on. And then they can secure separate financing like a construction loan or something for the DADU's unit.
Nice.
That's brilliant. That's a super smart way to go because getting construction financing isn't always the easiest part of this process. It's actually pretty tough. It's also a little more expensive than a normal standard single family loan.
Yes.
So doing that is actually very smart and it makes a lot of sense. What are the main challenges involved with these condos, or what are some of the things that people get stuck on most?
I would say the main challenge is having people, my clients and the surveyor, understand the site. Some surveyors have done more than others, so I always tell my clients I can work with any surveyor, but it might be 30 minutes of review and consult time with the surveyor versus 2 hours because you might need a lot of back and forth. I think another common issue is people waiting too long to start the process. I would rather have you start sooner rather than later. And I tell people all the time, oh, you're good, call me in 6 months. Like, we don't need to do anything now.
Yeah.
But it's worth that just 15 minutes, let's go over it, let's talk about it. Because multiple times I've gotten emails like, Katy, I am so sorry. I forgot I had to condo these. They went on the market on Monday. Oh, what can we do?
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah,
Jeez.
multiple times. And sometimes it's not even their fault. Sometimes they were given bad information. Sometimes they thought it was done. Sometimes they just know that I can get stuff done. And they thought, oh, Katy will be fine. She can handle it.
Jeez.
And I do. But it's stressful.
Yeah.
Not as much for me. It's more stressful for my client because then they have closing scheduled and you can't close until the condo's recorded. I've had clients do that too. It's so that's another thing. Don't close. Don't close on any unit until the condo's recorded. And I tell my clients, I tell their agents, like, if you're not sure, call me personally, and I will tell you. Because what happens is you're not selling a condo unit; you're selling the entire parent parcel.
Yeah.
That's
So now you just
only
sold
legal description you have.
both places for the price of one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is a massive hassle to undo. Again, not for me. I can't really undo that.
Yeah.
You have to work obviously with your agent and then with the lender, and then what do you do about property taxes and. Lenders don't like releasing a security interest they have in the entire property.
No, we have experience with that.
Yeah.
It takes a long time.
Yes.
It's not fun.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen, and make sure that your agent is good and actually knows how to read a title report.
Yes.
Because even on one of our projects, the title company sent me the title report, and they're supposed to be split. You'd already done all your job, and
So,
they still had
yes,
the legal describing the entire parcel, not just
You are in a long
the
line
condo.
of clients who have told me, oh my gosh, thank you for telling me to check because title had it wrong.
Yeah.
And there's things you can do to encourage title to get it right. Use the condo PSA. That should set off alarm
Yes,
bells.
it
If
should.
it's describing, lot 6, block 15 of some old plat in Seattle, it doesn't always though. So you just got to look. And so I really appreciate when my clients, if they don't know, they just send me what they have and say, will you just make sure this is right?
Just double check for
Because
me.
the time it takes, we're talking minutes to potentially,
Yeah.
save hours and hours of headache and heartache.
thousands of dollars probably as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. So other than waiting too long to start the process or not reading the legal description, what are some other mistakes people are making?
Those are really the main ones. I think one kind of hack that I see a lot that I really, really love is when people buy an existing single family that's actually kind of small. And we have those a lot in Seattle. And so if you buy an existing single family that only has 1,000 square feet.
Or smaller.
Or smaller.
Yeah.
I've seen them at like 600 square
Yeah.
feet. You can have those recategorized as the DADU through the permit process, and then you can build either a new single family where you don't have those square footage restrictions that you have with accessory dwelling units, or sometimes they build a new single family and attached accessory dwelling unit. So you get 3 units out of buying, 1,000-foot square house.
Yeah.
And I just really love those deals when it works out.
Yeah, and that is a great opportunity potentially. And it all depends on after you run the numbers. Like we had this exact situation where we bought a house that was 700 square feet upstairs, and they had another 200 square feet downstairs that was finished. So it was under 1,000 square feet. We ran the numbers on doing that exact same thing, and it didn't make sense. It only made sense to build a DADU.
Because of the neighborhood.
Because of the neighborhood, because of the resale prices of that. But it was an exciting opportunity when we realized that. We initially just thought, oh, it's just a DADU lot. That's fine. And then we're like, wait, no, you can make the house the DADU.
Yeah.
And build in the back and potentially do 2
Yeah,
units.
and it
like
won't
you said.
always pencil. Because building plans are going to take longer.
Yep.
Construction is going to take longer. So you're going to have additional holding costs.
Yep.
And sometimes it just doesn't make sense. But when it does, it can really pay off.
Exactly.
And the DADU can be in the front or the back, correct?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of
Seattle is
people
not-
perceive DADU only in the back.
And which is how they'll typically permit it new. But if it's an existing single family at the front of the lot, they allow it to be non-conforming.
So cool. Such a good hack. Another hack I want to bring up that I've seen people do is buying a 1 to 4 unit, or I guess potentially even more larger than that, multifamily unit, and then condoing off those and reselling those. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and this is relatively new. I haven't really seen this up until like the past year. But like right now, I have a client doing this with a 12 or 13 unit apartment building in Enumclaw. And he just really wants to provide affordable housing for first-time buyers, because his reasoning was, how are you ever going to afford to get into a place initially if you can't afford, $600,000 or $700,000? And so I really love that. I love providing affordable housing. I love that they're going to have, these remodeled units that are well maintained and taken care of, and some great community outdoor space. He's putting in a dog park, a barbecue pit. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And we're also looking at doing this to a hotel in Bellevue potentially. We have to work with the city to see what's allowed.
Yeah.
So because these are typically smaller units, they're much more affordable, and they get people into homes, into owning something when they wouldn't be able to otherwise.
That's super cool.
I hadn't heard about it for hotels. That's interesting.
I mean, I've heard about it converting a old motel or a hotel into an apartment, but I never thought about making them into condos. It makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at it as an affordable housing route to go. What areas around Seattle are you actually allowed to condo off properties, and more importantly, sell them as well? Because I know you can condo it anywhere.
Right.
You've literally told me you can condo a mailbox.
I could condo a mailbox.
I don't know why you ever would, but you technically could. But where can you actually condo something off and then sell it?
Yeah. Right now, the most common cities are Seattle, Kirkland, and Burien. I've also done a couple up in Snohomish, and
the county or the city?
Both, actually. Okay. You have to be careful up there because they do have rules against it. So the reason my client was able to do it was because he had a non-conforming kind of grandfathered in lot that had 2 existing houses on it. But that will all change with the new laws. So within the next year or so, you'll be able to do this anywhere.
Anywhere in the state.
But right now, Shoreline, no. Bellevue, no.
Bellevue, no.
Edmonds,
Bellevue's a hard no.
Everett, no.
Everett, you can.
Okay.
Yes. I just haven't done as many up there, but I have done some.
Is it up there, though, that you have to live in the front house, or maybe not the front house, but the primary house?
They recently changed that. They got rid of their owner occupancy requirement.
Ooh, that's news.
Yes.
To us.
And so that's good. I think, honestly, everyone's just getting ready for the code updates they have to make anyway. Yep. But they had just updated their bill, or their code within the past year.
Exciting.
Now I'm going to go look at stuff.
I know. We're always looking for deals.
About to jump on there and look.
One of the biggest misconceptions, and we hear this a ton when we go to investor meetups or people just ask us questions, is they go, hey, I thought you couldn't sell off the main house before you build a condo or build a DADU.
Yeah, they think the DADU has to be
completed before you can sell one of the other units.
Somebody is out there telling people this.
Yes, because it's all
I hear
over
it
the
all
place.
the time. I was told you couldn't, and I just say, I'm sorry, you were misinformed. I'm sorry if that's impacted you negatively.
So to be clear, yes,
well,
please.
I'm an attorney, so I have to caveat all of this. So if what you're building is detached units, so just a single family and a DADU, we can almost certainly record the condo before you've built, before you even have approved plans. The whole point is to create a unit that you can build on. If it's not buildable, there's not a real point to doing this. Yeah. So if for some reason we condo it, then you get approved plans and we're like, oh shoot, it doesn't quite fit in the unit we created. That's okay, but we do need to amend the map. And I like to tell people that because that might cost a couple $1,000s depending on what the surveyor charges you. It's not a ton of my time, but it's just something to be aware of. For my clients, it's almost always worth it because they were able to get that separate financing, get out of their hard money loan. So whatever, a couple $1,000s just isn't that big of a deal to them. Yep. The answer changes when you're talking about attached units because if you have units that are separated just by a straight party wall and not floors, but they just have a dividing wall, then we can record the condo map as long as you have approved plans. Now, nobody's policing this, so I could record the map before you had approved plans, but when you talk about trying to get the unit line exactly where that wall is supposed to be built, that is a risky move.
That is.
So I'm not even saying I wouldn't do it, but my client would be very aware of the risks. Yeah. Again, the cost to amend if something went wrong, just so they were aware. But it might be worth it to some people. I have a client right now that wants to do that. His plans are almost approved, but not quite. But he's got that hard money loan. Yeah. So, and I said, here's the risks. We can do it. Only certain surveyors will do that. So again, talk to me. I can tell you who to talk to.
Yeah.
If you have a unit that's separated by floors, so if the downstairs is going to be one level and one unit and the upstairs is a different unit, then the structure has to be substantially completed. That is a state code requirement that the surveyor has to be able to say that it was substantially completed and they looked and measured the elevation so that they know exactly where each unit is going to go. Those are not super common, especially not in Seattle.
No.
So that's almost never a deal breaker for anybody.
Yep.
But yes, to be clear, we can get a lot, condo it without doing anything. I just think it's smart to at least speak to an architect first so you have an idea of where you would build any additional buildings.
So I'm going to repeat it
good,
for the
we've
third or fourth
solved it.
time now.
Yeah.
You can sell one or the other before you actually build.
Yeah.
A DADU.
And so let's say we have that DADU condo and we record it and you have not constructed the DADU yet, you can absolutely sell off the existing single family even before your plans are approved. But that all goes back to the risk because there is a slight risk there that for whatever reason that DADU won't be approved to fit within the unit we've created for it.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then we have to amend the map,
Yep.
which is really easy when you own all the units.
Yes,
As
really
soon
hard
as you
when
sell,
you sell it.
As soon as you sell a unit, because if you're speaking about a rectangular lot and your DADU doesn't fit in the back, what you need to do is have some more of that yard that is currently owned by somebody else.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to go to them and say, we need, 5 feet of your backyard. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. Most
And-
likely they'll make you pay.
Yes, exactly.
Or say no potentially as well.
So, yeah, exactly. So typically I'd say maybe don't sell until you have approved plans. But again, that has nothing to do with actually constructing something.
Yeah. And we've actually done this where
Yeah.
we remodeled the front house, started building the DADU. DADU was partially done.
Well, no, we got the condos done before we ever broke ground
Yeah.
on the DADU. Because we thought, well, let's exit out of this. And we had, we were pretty confident. We had a really big yard. We were confident of where the DADU was going to go and that we had enough space to get it done. Just happened that this is when rates went up. The market
Slow down.
turned and the front house didn't sell. So we pulled it off until the DADU was mostly done and then put it back on and it sold. But, yeah, when people tell me that it's not possible, I'm like, well, I did it. So
Yeah,
it
I've
is.
done it.
So I'm glad we cleared that up once and for all.
Yep.
As you were saying, there's not a ton of places where you can do these condos and sell them off separate right now.
Right now.
In
But that's-
May of 2024.
But that is about to change. We're
Yes.
so excited that that's about to change. So my background is an attorney too. So I'm stoked to get deep into these laws. Let's talk about them and what the changes are going to be. So for everybody who doesn't know, these laws passed in Washington State. HB 1110 and 1337. I forgot these numbers for a second. And these are going to help create more density. And I see 1337 as kind of making sure municipalities don't stop people from creating
Yes.
the density.
That's exactly what it does.
Yeah. So as somebody who does these and builds these as an investor, there are these roadblocks that can get in your way, whether it's parking, trees,
Impact fees,
Different-
all sorts of things. Anything that a city or municipality can throw at the developer to stop them from being able to actually do what the state wants to have happen.
Yes.
Correct. So these laws are trying to basically create this density and not allow these municipalities to stop it, which it does music to our ears because it's just going to allow us to create more housing, which we desperately need here in Washington
need,
State
yes.
very badly.
Not
So
just for affordability, but we have so many people
Yeah.
moving here.
We just don't have enough
We
houses.
don't have anywhere for them to
currently.
go. Yeah.
Yep. So Christian, do you want to start with 1110 and then we'll get into the next one
Sure.
after that?
Yeah. So HB 1110. So this is known as the Middle Housing Bill and has already been signed into law by the governor. Washington clearly has a housing storage problem. It's projected that the state will need 1 million new homes in the next 20 years. By 2044, we'll need an additional million
million?
homes.
That's a lot.
Million. And this bill is a way to help solve this by allowing more density where they typically have only had single family housing or one house on a lot. Can you give us kind of the elements as an investor, but also just for the everyday person, kind of what we should all be paying attention to with this bill, House Bill 1110?
Yeah, the big thing in this, like you said, is middle housing. And middle housing is duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, 5 plexes, 6 plexes, cottage housing, apartment style housing. There's 9 total.
Wow.
And so what this bill does is it tells cities you have to pick at least 6 of those and make them available. So for some reason a city was like, we really hate 5 plexes. Well, that's okay. You don't have to allow for that.
That's funny.
So it allows for these kind of what were only just multifamily structures to be built in the single family zone. So it essentially does away with the single family zone in most cities, any city within the urban growth area. So I think it's important to note this does not apply to unincorporated counties. I get that question a lot. It does not.
It's a good clarification.
Yeah. And so for clients who are thinking about buying a property now, it's like, well, just think real quick. Like currently, maybe you can get 3 units, but if you waited a year, could you get 6? Is that worth it to you to wait?
Yeah.
You know, it might not be. There might be a few additional, maybe environmental considerations that maybe cost a little bit more in developing additional units. But it's something to think about, and it's a conversation to have before you make that decision, I think.
Yeah. I know that this is all going to be dependent on the population of the city, how many units you can do.
Yes.
So it's not a straight blanket. You can now build 6 houses on one lot that used to only have 1 house on it.
Right. And so, the population numbers are based on the 2020 census.
Okay.
I was going to compile a list, and then I thought, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And I Googled that, and
Nice.
Maker's Architecture has a fantastic chart broken down which cities are within each tier and what their population was in the 2020 census. And it's color-coded. I love it. So if you just Google that, you'll find it.
Can you say it again, what it is that has it?
Yeah, it's Maker's Architecture.
Maker's Architecture.
And if you just Google, Bill 1110, it should come up, or if add population or something in there, and you should see it. But generally speaking, and I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget, if the city has a population between 25 and 75,000, you get 2 units per residential lot, or you can get 4 units if 1 unit is built as affordable housing and they have very specific requirements. And I think that aspect is actually going to be kind of difficult. It'd be difficult for them to be built similarly, but to sell one for less. Or if it's located within a quarter mile of a transit stop. What defines a transit stop?
That was going to be
tricky.
my next question.
So
yeah.
I've asked cities, how are you going to handle this? And they basically said they'll figure it out and work it out in their code. But in the bill, they specify it has to be a stop on a high capacity transportation system funded or expanded under provisions of a certain RCW, which includes commuter rail stops, stops on a rail or fixed guideway system, or stops on bus rapid transit routes.
Okay, so it's not your regular old corner bus stop.
Not just any old bus stop, no.
Okay, so it's more like probably a park and ride as well, I assume, would apply.
I assume,
so, yeah.
I think what we'll see is each city defining which stops in their city meet those criteria. And then I think if we think something different, we'll just have to maybe appeal or apply for some sort of variance. Yeah.
Interesting. Do we know yet the timing of when this is going to be rolled out statewide or city by city, or how all this is going to kind of pan out?
Yes, but it's a complicated answer. It's not just like by May or 2025.
Yep.
So what the bill said is that each city within the urban growth area has to do it within 6 months of their next planned comprehensive code update, because all these cities have a schedule of when they update their code. So then it just has to be implemented within 6 months of that. For most places, that's going to be within the next year. I know Tacoma's, people are very excited about Tacoma. That'll be changing this summer. And so I have clients with like 50 condos ready to go in Tacoma.
Wow.
Because people have wanted to do condos there for years.
Yeah.
And so I'm
and
working
there's generally some huge lots down there too.
for way cheaper than Seattle.
way
and obviously
cheaper.
you're not going to get the resale value you get in Seattle either.
Yeah.
But the builders down there are super excited about this.
I'm sure. Okay, so probably by this time next year, we should have a general idea.
I think June by 2025, every city should have it updated and implemented.
Okay.
Where do we find out? Because I've been trying to look at this. How do I find out when these updates happen? Do I have to look at each different municipality and find out what's going on, and what's the best place to find that?
That's a good question. I have that exact same problem. So currently my assistant is working on just compiling a list.
Oh, cool.
But I told her the same thing. Google it and see if someone else has already done it. Because my guess is they have. I would just need to check it for accuracy because I don't necessarily trust other people's numbers, and cities may update when, they're going to have this information available. So I'm working on it. You can contact me if you have a question about a specific city.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know because I was
very helpful.
about to Google all of that. Yeah, I know myself. So I'm excited that you have a plan for that.
Have any already applied or approved them? Are they already going with these?
Not that I know of. I think Tacoma might be the first. I mean, like I said, Everett did update their code, but I don't think it's incorporated all of 1110 yet. It just changed some things that are affected by 1337. But yeah.
Okay. We'll just keep playing the waiting game and Googling this over and over again.
Would you recommend, so I am an investor.
Let's say I do what I do.
Let's pretend I have the job I have. Would you buy properties knowing, as we can look at something and we'll go, okay, I know you could probably fit this many units based on access, based on where, would you buy them and hold them and wait?
I think that varies so much by each individual project. I mean, and how much time and money the investor wants to spend on that specific lot. It might not pencil if they have to hold it for a year. But if it's already constructed and they can rent it out until the time comes to maybe redevelop it, then maybe. I just think people need to have someone that they're talking to. There are people that are really good at this. I know you guys are a great resource for so many people. And so I would say don't guess. If this isn't your area, reach out to somebody who knows and talk through all the numbers to make sure you're just looking at it and you have a full picture.
Always got to run the numbers. Always.
Yes. But I think a lot of people are trying to get ahead, right? Because these properties right now, let's say like Edmonds, it's not valued in the same way a yard is valued in Seattle. I've seen wholesalers recently, they sent us a deal the other day, and it had a DADU potential in the yard, and they increased the value by $200,000 simply because you get this DADU lot, which when you actually ran the numbers, it was like, I might as well just flip this house. This doesn't make any sense. But these lots are getting so valued in Seattle because a lot of people want to do this investment strategy. Whereas in places like Edmonds or Everett or
Tacoma,
you name it, people are not valuing the lots that way because currently you can't do it. So I think people are thinking that they could purchase things while the value is still low or not.
Yes. I would say I definitely have clients doing that. And like I said, Tacoma is just a big one. People have wanted to condo there for so long. I can't tell you how many clients I've turned down. Just, sorry, that's not allowed. And not just Tacoma, but like University Place, kind of all those little areas down there.
South Sound.
Yes. People are very excited. And if they only want to do a single family in a DADU, you can do that now. I mean, buy those lots, get building, even if we can't sell them quite yet. We're very close in Tacoma. And so, I think that's a different question than if you're thinking, oh, maybe I could get 6 units,
Yeah.
Totally.
So,
Yep.
And I think
that makes sense.
I'm actually just as a human, I'm excited for this density to take place. Not just as a developer and investor trying to make money. I think it's going to be so great for our state to allow and have so much more affordable housing that will get added because of this. And some of it is not going to be very affordable. Like a DADU in Seattle, $800,000. That's not super affordable.
It's not, but it's brand new construction in downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
You can't get that any other way.
Exactly.
And so, especially for like a detached standalone house where you have a yard, you might have a parking stall.
Yep.
And I just think it's amazing. You can't get that any other way.
Exactly. So I'm excited to see how this all plays out. And I do think there's going to be a lot more affordable ways that people can actually own real estate, which people are clamoring for. They need it. And there's also a lot of developers that are going to take advantage of this and have some affordable rentals available. More inventory there, which we also clearly need. So it's going to be exciting.
One question I have before we get into the next law is kind of how these, and I genuinely don't understand this, and maybe you can explain it to me, but how these laws, they kind of coordinate with each other, because this 1337 says you can put 2 ADUs, but the other law also says you can have more dense.
Our guess, and we were talking about this previously, like, Was it all politics? Like they didn't get it in one bill, so they threw it in the other?
Is there
or
some
do you know any of this?
differentiation that we're not understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes just with the size of the lot, it doesn't matter if you could get 4 units or 6 units. It's just not big enough.
Yeah.
And that might not be what you want. You might not want to build like a multifamily building. You might want 2 detached units or 3 detached units that all stand alone separately. So I think it just offers more flexibility. It's not like one trumps the other. They're all going to be implemented in every city, and you'll just have to look at that specific city to see what you can get approved. Speak with an architect who can do the FAR calculations and will be able to advise on specific lots.
Yes, always. We love our architects. We talk to them almost weekly.
Yeah.
Hey, will you look at this? We might buy this.
Yes.
We want to make sure that
you look
you
at this real
agree.
quick?
We think it's fine, but we want to make sure you agree.
Well, and as investors and developers, we're learning so much just having those conversations with the architects as well, trying to be creative, and we start to see more opportunities. And with these 2 new bills being passed, there is so much opportunity out there
For sure.
for those that are looking for it and that are prepared. So good job listening, whoever you are, because you're learning a lot, and you're probably going to know more than the majority of people out there.
And then, one thing I wanted to add was we kind of only talked about option 1, which was for cities between 25 and 75,000, and that was the 2 or 4 units. Quickly, I'd like to add that for cities with over 75,000 people, you can get 4 units or 6 if you meet, the affordable housing or transit stop criteria. So
That's going to be huge.
That's so big.
yeah, if you have, 6 units in Seattle would be insane.
Crazy.
That really would be insane.
Yeah.
And it's going to change some neighborhoods. And
Yes.
And I think the reason that, is it HB 1337 that they added this? Shannon's the one that studied that one a lot more than me, so that's why I'm asking her. Is that the reason why they put all those ways to stop developers from doing this stuff? Is that why?
Ways to allow them to do it?
Yeah.
I think a lot, anytime you have changes, everybody says, oh, we want density, we want more affordable housing, we want more options.
Not my backyard.
Yeah, exactly. They're like,
Well,
but not here.
Yeah, and that's
somewhere
a huge
else.
that's a huge reason why, the only reason really why we don't do condos in all these other cities, because cities' codes have language that says either you even can't record a condo on this, but mostly what they say is they prohibit the single family being owned separately from the DADU. And if you can't sell them separately, that defeats the purpose.
Exactly.
For the most part. So that's what I think, that's a main component of 1337 and what it will allow moving forward.
Yeah.
One other way these laws interact that I wanted to touch base on is who supersedes who. So we have zoning, and then we have these laws, and then we also have CC&Rs or covenants in certain neighborhoods. Who's the winner here?
That's a fantastic question. So I've actually spoken with the drafters of these bills, and they wanted, one of them has a background in property management, and we don't often get like a real estate guy, in the house. And he said he's kind of like a lone wolf out there.
I'm sure he is, yeah.
But he wanted this to apply to all the old underlying covenants. So for example, a lot of the plats in Kirkland have these old CC&Rs from the 50s and 60s that say on any lot you can only have a detached single family house. You can't build anything else. And so because that doesn't conflict with the city of Kirkland's code, you could go into Kirkland and apply for a permit and build a house, and Kirkland would allow it because they're not going to enforce a private covenant. Kirkland is only bound by the state law and how that restricts them and their own city code. But what could happen if your neighbor knows about that restriction and doesn't want you to add density to their neighborhood, they can hire an attorney, tell you to knock it off, or they can sue you, and they'll win because this is on title.
Yeah.
So my advice to everyone before you do anything, send me your title report so I can review it, because it can be financially devastating. I had a client buy nearly $80 million worth of property in Kirkland before they were my clients. And their attorney didn't tell them about these title restrictions. 75% of the properties they bought had them. And then they fired that attorney, and someone said, call Katy. And oh man, I felt so bad for them. But we're working through it. On some of them we've had amendments recorded. You just get 50% or more of the neighbors to sign, and we can have that restriction removed. But to answer your question, obviously state law trumps. That's why these cities are forced to follow these new bills. And then there's the city code. But so far, the state has kind of not said, we're going to force citizens to, change what they agree to privately. And so even though those are really old, they still see them as private covenants, and people are allowed to contract how they want. And but I have heard there are other bills coming down the pipeline that will
potentially
supersede those if they get passed. Some people are very against that, though.
Yeah, because I know there's some neighborhoods that are generally a little bit nicer off neighborhoods.
Yes,
and they have their own CCNRs that will supersede these new bills that are coming out currently, and that are currently in place.
Right.
I'll be curious to see after these, years down the line, 5-10 years, if there's more density, if those covenants still hold. I feel like the value of those properties might even increase more because you're going to have this extra space, and
right.
there's no way that the neighborhood can change or anything like that. So I'm interested to see how that plays out, like long term, on the value of those that do hold those covenants.
Me too. And I think if there's ever a law that tries to kind of make those, not useful anymore, we're going to see so many lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
So many lawsuits. People in those neighborhoods don't mind attorney fees. And so
exactly.
they will sue.
Yep. Okay, so let's get into the details of 1337. As we talked about, the other law kind of creates this density, and I feel like 1337 is the key to opening the door and letting the investors actually do what they want to do on these lots and saying, hey, municipalities, you can't prevent them from actually creating this density. So it has things in there like lowering impact fees, creating less street improvements that are required, the occupancy requirement. That's a big one right now in a lot of areas where you have to own the DADU in the house, the same person. So you can't sell these off separate. So this will prevent things like that.
Or if you want to sell off the DADU, you have to live in the other house on the property.
Yeah. So Katie, will you tell us more about how this is going to help investors?
Yes. So one of my favorite things about this bill, I have two. One is it allows for 3 units total, so 2 accessory dwelling units plus a single family in every jurisdiction, and it raises the minimum square footage to 1,000 square feet. So a lot of jurisdictions right now you can only have one, and their cap might be 600 square feet or 800 square feet.
Yeah, that's huge.
So this kind of brings everyone up to where Seattle got 2 years ago.
Yep.
And I think that will be fantastic. And I also love that you can choose either 2 detached or 2 attached or one of each. Because currently in Seattle, you typically can't have, 2 detached accessory dwelling units in a single family zone. Yep. But if you have the space for it, I think a lot of people would choose that over making one attached. And so I think that's going to be fantastic. And then obviously it doesn't prohibit condoing them, which is kind of the key to making this investor friendly.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's where you come in.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's so great. Yeah, I was going to ask about that because in Seattle you can only have, so if you have a single family house, you can have an attached ADU and a detached ADU. You cannot build 2 like DADUs, for instance, even if you have the space and you have the access and you have all the things, they don't care. You can't do it. So this allows you to do any combo you want.
Yes.
Okay. That's amazing. That will open a lot of doors for a lot more development because those detached sell better.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know.
So
it encourages the people who build them to build. If it's going to sell for higher, you're going to build that. So this, speaking of the different units, this bill mentions principal unit. Does this mean the original single family?
Well, it means a single family unit. So typically, yes, what they're probably referring to is the existing house. But like we were talking about before, you can often have that recategorized as an accessory dwelling unit through the permit process if it meets the requirements. And so then the principal unit would change to whatever your new single family is.
Got it.
Similar to how we were talking about with one of our projects where the principal unit was the original house that was there. It was under 1,000 square feet. We could have made that the accessory dwelling unit.
Correct.
And still, or DADU really, and built another unit or 2 behind it. So, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I am so excited about this. When I read this, because I'd seen it before, but then preparing for talking to you, I read it again. And when I saw all these details of what you can actually do, like limiting height restrictions, making sure those are good, making it's lot coverage.
Yeah.
What is that going to look like?
I know.
I mean, do we have any insight in that one?
No, I'm
haven't heard
actually
anything either.
curious also, but they did throw in really developer friendly things in there, and you don't always have a parking requirement. You know, the setback from the alley can be reduced to nothing, so you can build right on the alley line.
Which you can already do in Seattle,
And
but not in other
I
municipalities.
saw tree retention.
Yeah.
Yeah, which can be such a big deal for
Yes.
people.
That can be a game changer.
Yeah, the impact fees. I mean, because what we saw after Wakaiwa Pass is different cities coming out with restrictions that would almost punish a developer for
Totally.
recording a condo or trying to build or do anything. And so I feel like this bill foresaw a lot of things that, you know, cities may do and said, oh, no, you can't actually do that. We're just we're going to clarify it from the beginning. So it'll be interesting to see how cities interpret this and how they implement it.
Yeah.
I did see there are some things that it said specifically, like, we are not doing these.
Yes.
You want to talk about those?
So a big one of that is we're not saying you can't have a restriction on short-term rentals. And a lot of, you know, my clients don't like to include a restriction on short-term rentals if it's like kind of your basic investor property where you're going to build it and sell it. So what that's saying is if the city wants to include a restriction that says you can't Airbnb this, they can. It doesn't prevent that.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
And then also like ECAs, sewer, things like that, which,
Yep.
I mean, that makes sense why they couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
Get
You
rid of
have to
those
be connected. You have to be connected to
Yeah,
sewer.
kind of important.
Yeah.
Unless you're on septic already, but yeah, which
Yeah.
that would be tough to do. I mean,
Yep.
that's going to be a big thing statewide. Septic systems, they take a lot of space.
Yes.
And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays into this and what density you're even going to be able to do when you
Yes.
have that in place. I always like to ask people that talk to and work with tons of different investors kind of what they see everyone doing before it's actually really becoming public. So what are some of the opportunities that you see people doing that maybe not everyone sees yet or knows about yet?
I think we've talked about them a lot. I think people are very excited about Tacoma.
Yeah.
Like it's just been an area people wanted to develop for so long.
Yep.
Same with a lot of cities on the east side, and it'll be very interesting to see how those neighborhoods react. But
I think they're gonna be pissed.
Woodinville, Bellevue.
That's what I think.
So it'll be interesting to see how those play out. I think we touch on it also with the like already multifamily housing and turning apartments into condos and creating more of that affordable housing. I mean, with existing buildings, I think it's kind of amazing too.
Yep.
So I really see that's where we're headed. I feel like the growth we've seen in Seattle just over the past, 6 years or so, we're going to start see replicated in other cities as well.
Absolutely.
Shannon, you have any last minute questions before we wrap up?
No, I don't think I have anything else. I think you covered everything. And I'm now really excited to go.
Katie, anything that we
properties.
didn't go over that you would like people to make sure they know?
I think in the very beginning, Shannon asked me about time. How long does a condo take? And I don't think we touched on that. I generally tell people 2 to 3 months, which is important to keep in mind when you come to me last minute and you want it done in a week.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I can't do it, but generally the surveyor can't do it. And so
Yep.
that ends up being the big issue.
There's a lot of moving pieces involved with it. It's not just you. There's other
Right.
people as well that have to get on
Exactly.
board.
I keep room in my schedule. If a client calls me and they're like, I am so sorry. I'm like, yeah, I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can get it done. I can't speak for surveyors though.
Yep.
And it's much more involved. They might have to do a site visit. They might have to get the CAD files from the architect and do all these things. So it's just not as simple. So I always say, contact me. If you're not sure, it's better sooner than later, because worst case scenario, I say, oh yeah, just call me again in, however many months. But I think that's a very important consideration.
If people do want to hire you, as they should, what is the best way that they can get a hold of you?
You can call me, you can email me. Like you said, I'm at Dimension Law Group. So we have a website that has all of our contact info on
Perfect.
it. And that's the best way. I'm pretty
Perfect.
responsive to
So
emails.
Google the Dimension Law Group. You're based out of Tukwila, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I've been to the office. I was trying to remember where it was, but yeah. Super easy to get to if you actually needed to get there.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
which-
I don't ever go there, but
Yeah.
I'm sure some people do.
I don't go to our office either. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for your time today, sharing all of your expertise. I think, and I know, everyone is going to get a ton out of this. I know that
learned
we
so
learned
much.
even more than we already knew, and we have a lot of knowledge about this already. And there's still so much to learn, though, too. And there's going to be more and more and more as all these cities implement their own rules and regulations. So
maybe we have to do a follow-up.
Yeah,
I was
that's what I
going
was
to
gonna
say.
say.
I know in
Once
a
we have
year we should
answers.
touch base again and see how everything's changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be so fun to see how this all plays out.
And we're all going to study populations now.
Yeah.
That's the new homework, everyone.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Maker's architecture.
Makers
Great
architecture,
chart.
Google their
Yeah.
chart, see what the populations are, because it's based off 2020 census info. I wonder when that's going to change again.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because I'm sure there's some cities that are right on the edge and that are probably at this point.
And the chart from Makers has follow-up kind of population information, so you see some of them have already grown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could see these when the rules change again or when the census comes out again. Maybe that changes in the future.
We'll see.
Interesting.
Thank you, Katy.
Yes, thank you again
Yeah, thank
so
you for
much for
having
your
me.
time. And we'll see you all next time here on the Awesome in Seattle podcast.